How do I love being a woman in this body, on this planet, and tap into this cyclical wisdom that governs my biology, that governs the seasons that literally govern all life on this planet, and then the spiritual season, because it's the same as the hero's journey. All of these mimic each other. And so when you see that this is a blueprint for the human game, then it's full game on. Then you are playing a completely different game in this life, and you're doing it from the vehicle of your body. The version of me prior to spiritual awakening was an extreme sports athlete. I'm punishing my body, and I don't know how to live in accordance with feminine rhythms. Ultimately, it gets to a point where your body's like, I cannot keep doing this. My body ended up being like the physical representation of what was happening for me on like the polarity level of feminine and masculine. The body is so brilliant and wise, and is honestly the perfect blueprint for all other aspects of our healing. You're going to be facing off with every part of you that had to learn how to move and talk and be in a certain way in order to be liked, in order to be accepted. Somatics is going to unravel all of that. You don't need to sit and be a Buddhist monk in a cave to get these answers. You get them through your life.
Katie, welcome to the Home to Self podcast. I am so happy that you're here. Honestly, I don't even remember how we actually connected the first time, but
I do.
Feel like we've just
It's a hilarious story.
Wait, please tell. Oh wait, was it Odessa?
It was in the pit at Odessa, and we did not know that our groups of friends knew each other. And I don't know what led to us coming in, like literally seeing each other, running up to it because we didn't know each other. Mega hug, like full body, just like squish. Oh my God, that was the best thing ever. And then we stop and we're just like, we should be friends. I like you. And then we found out that the groups of people we were both with actually knew each other. And I was just like, oh my God, this is the best.
Oh my gosh, yes.
So
okay,
that's how we became friends.
Yeah, I remember now. I was like, was that the first time? I'm like, yes, it was. It didn't feel like it was. It's one of those connections that I'm like, I've known you for lifetimes, but hello again in this one. It's so good to see you again.
Hello, we should do a mega hug in the pit at Odessa when your guys' crazy story to even end up your whole crew getting into the pit. That was a miracle ticket for me too. It was just like, yeah, and apparently we just had some cuteness show aggression. We just needed to squish out.
So good. The energy was so good. Such a great moment. And yeah, I mean, that whole story is crazy, like you said, and maybe we'll get into that. But regardless, it was just such a beautiful opportunity to like see just the divine synchronicity in all of the connections that were unfolding. And I feel like that has continued to happen every time that we've connected again. It's been in a very synchronistic way. And you just happen to pop up. I feel like you just pop in and out of my reality in the perfect moments. And so I'm excited to have you on today. I know that you have such a similar story. You do such similar work with women and somatics and embodiment and cycle syncing and so many beautiful things to help us really reconnect to our bodies and each other and nature. And so, yeah, I'm excited to dive into all of it today, but I just want to hand it over to you right away and let you introduce yourself a little bit further in terms of like, who are you beyond just your titles and roles, but like, who is Katie? Who is this beautiful being that is so radiant? And yeah, tell us more.
Yeah. Okay, so this is funny. I recently had a friend tell me, because I think all of us in this line of work like struggle to define like what do I do and who am I? And we get asked this all the time because we're doing cool stuff like this. And it's such a shape-shifty thing, and I'm extra, I guess, fluid, being with a lot of Libra placements, anima reflector in human design, and all the things. But my friend recently told me that she's like, oh, you're like a hummingbird. And it helped me to kind of like hone in on like feeling like, oh, I'm a pollinator of epic groups of people. And I get to go, just like you said, go pop in and like just at the right time. Hi, I'm here for the nectar. And then do that in multiple places and multiple spaces. But that's been really consistent my whole life. So to back it up a little bit more context, for a long chunk of my life, I would say like the previous version of Katie, the version of me prior to spiritual awakening was an extreme sports athlete, like full on extreme sports enthusiast, free ride skier, competitive skier, slope style, as well as like, yeah, rails, jumps. And then it got into free ride. But anything I could get my hands on. It was kiteboarding, mountain biking, scuba diving. I was a raft guide, like rock climbing, anything, skydiving, anything I could get my hands on. That was like, ooh, what's this next way to play and to challenge myself? And I had a fun, very fun, identity death with that. That kind of nudged me into lovingly, like, boop, here you go, off the cliff, into the world of feminine embodiment, into cycle syncing, into healing my hormones, into were a lot of kind of domino affected issues from living my life in so much adrenaline, in so much hustle, and in so much go, 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 even if it was fun. Really realizing where, my body is, I'm punishing my body. And I don't know how to live in accordance with feminine rhythms. And I am in an extreme sports, male-dominated industry where that has never been a conversation for anyone, like especially not in an extreme sports setting. And that pushed me into needing to learn how to regulate my nervous system, learning how to cycle sync, understanding root cause healing, like tap back into my feminine, heal so much of the ways that I had suppressed her, and then heal my relationship with the masculine. And it just kept going and ultimately led me into a world of, how many years later is it now? 7 years later, becoming a somatic facilitator and practitioner myself, quantum healing, root cause healing work, and just how that benefits really everyone is cyclical, but women especially so. How can we thrive in our bodies as they're divinely designed in order to then bring about like the change in the creation and the authenticity in the world that's needed? How do we not just ascend past our body, but really actually anchor more deeply in as this epic quantum spacesuit like vehicle that's needed for our souls to carry out the mission that we're here to carry out, and not feel like we have to bypass the signals and symptoms, but actually, oh, this is God like speaking through the subtle languages. That's not English. Like, go figure. Go figure. The divine doesn't speak English. Oh gosh, I need to expand my sensual perception in other ways.
Yeah, I love that. What a powerful story. Essentially, I feel like you went from, the extreme of running on adrenaline and you could say being more in the masculine energy to then really diving into and understanding the beauty of the feminine and the embodiment and the somatics and so much of what you talk about now. And as I was scrolling through your page, I came across one of the reels that you had pinned on your profile, and it was someone's comment on like, oh, your body goals, and then you diving into like, what if I told you this wasn't actually from working out, or that I haven't worked out in 6 months, and listed everything that it was, like listening to your body, slowing down, honoring your intuition, cycle syncing, all these things. And really coming into right relationship with your body. And so I'm curious to hear you talk more about that journey, because I know there are so many women out there who desire that kind of connection with their bodies and yet feel so disconnected, which is understandable, right? We live in a world that kind of teaches us to disconnect, to disassociate, to push through, right? It's a patriarchy in terms of like our systems and not really honoring the cycles of the feminine. There's so much that goes into it. However, it is our responsibility if we want to reconnect, like we have the power to do that. And so I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your story with that and how it unfolded.
Yeah, it was definitely being told through initial whispers that I didn't know how to hear, of just the things that we think that are so normalized, like the brain fog, the fatigue, the forcing through period pain in general, because our periods actually aren't meant to be painful, PMS, all of those things. And those are so normalized in society that I never thought to question them. It was just, if nothing else, it was like misery loves company. It was like a way to actually have like a deeper sisterhood with women, was by like complaining about the things that weren't like going well with our bodies. And we hear this with men too, and just like, oh, okay, we're getting older, oh gosh, this, and then being in a whole industry of people who are throwing themselves onto the ground and into the air for fun, like injuries were just a part of it. So there is this general culture of not ever questioning a lot of the things that are actually our body's whispers, and actually like the field and God's whispers, the hey, there is another way. But because our whole society and culture is so normalized to just like, okay, you get into your 30s, it's all downhill from here, and then you get yep, PMS is just the way it is, and here are all these things that we normalize and have jokes about, and we never think like, oh, this is actually a signal. And I've been guided for a really long time to have a different relationship with this. But if you don't know anyone who's speaking to that, you would never question it. And so then they get louder before before their screams, their whispers. But ultimately it gets to a point where your body's like, I cannot keep doing this. And it's for anyone, I'm so curious to like hear if anyone has in the feedback to this podcast similar relationships, because it feels like life is picking on you and like forcing you into this, but it is actually your body in collaboration with the field around you. Like, oh, here's another injury. And we don't get injuries unless our biofield is weak in that area anyway. So that's a whole other fun thing to dive into that I was unaware of. But essentially, I continued to injure myself, specifically on my left side. I didn't know any of this yet. The word manifestation is not, I don't know what that is. And so this whole realm of healing and subtlety literally doesn't exist. It's just pure extreme sports and getting by and working too many jobs and having all of the classes in college. And I continued to have bigger and bigger injuries. So I tore a bunch of ligaments and tendons in my ankle, in my left ankle. And then that kind of, trying to force through those and just put my foot back in a ski boot because I just want to get back out there and ski. And so not giving myself any recovery time for that and just feeling like left out. Oh no, I'm being left behind. It was during a year. What year was this? This was my junior year, especially in college, where I had the opportunity to go to the World University Games. And it was the first year that freestyle skiing was part of it, that free skiing in particular. I think they had already had moguls, but they didn't have slope or rail jams or slope style or pipe. And so my university team had been selected as one of the teams to represent the US to go do that. And so I got to be in that group, but in preseason training, I destroyed my ankle at Woodward on the super trampolines. And I was just in so much of a like, no, I can't miss this opportunity. Like, I just needed to get my foot back in the boot and like get back to it and just work through the pain. And that could be used as a metaphor for like literally everything in life, but specifically for my body. And then you could get into the specificities of like, oh, okay, there's the wounded feminine. Now I am over here over relying on the masculine. And so then there's like an overuse wound almost on the masculine. And that has already been my life. And now it's showing up in my body. And so then there's forcing through that injury. Then I finally get back to skiing after like taking the most minimal amount of rest ever. I had friends and coaches who were like, Katie, no, you really need to give yourself a few weeks. And I'm like, I can't. And finally get back into skiing and then out there training at Breckenridge. And Breckenridge has kind of like this backwind in the park. And I am a light person. And so hitting the jumps, this backwind of gust hit me and sent me like to the flats. And I don't know what happened that day, but I ended up concussing myself and needing to be taken to the urgent care. So my friends like got me down the mountain. I was still able to ski, but they could tell immediately like something's wrong with Katie. Like she's loopy. No one actually saw it. They just could see that I like went down and didn't like go into the next jump. So they were presumed, people fall all the time, especially when you're training on new tricks and things. And granted, just to put this out there, this was before women were doing all the dope shit that they're doing now in the Olympics. Like my best trick was a 540. Like, so I just want to like place myself in the timeline of dope shit going on. It's crazy to see how much women's skiing has accelerated in the last 10 years. It's nutty. And it's so cool to have been on like just the precipice of that. So I'm like talking this up, like invited to the World University Games, but I just want to acknowledge the women that are crushing it now. Like, holy shit. I was really on like this wave before that wave. And, but still significant to me, backflips, 540s, et cetera, et cetera. And, got just wind gusted. And what we guess happened was a ski pole uh, hitting the ground, because I don't think it was my knee. There wasn't any bruising in my knee, but my pole was slightly bent, and ski pulled to the goggle, like super gusted on it, down, pull to the goggle. And then they took me like down to see, because I was loopy. I wasn't making any sense. I was able to ski down, but they ended up getting me. I don't know if it was technically an ambulance, but I do vaguely remember, and I don't know if this is based off of what they were telling me, being like, yeah, strapped in, cracking jokes, concussion jokes, being taken to the emergency care. And then the first thing I personally remember was them asking to take out my earrings so they could x-ray my face to see if I had fractured and like cracked my cheekbone. And they're doing all the concussion testing, and can you like, do you remember the 3 words we told you? And it was like Blue Monkey 22. And I'm like, why do I know what that is? I don't remember you telling me that. And so it's starting to come back in that moment. But yeah, needing to then, my ski coach ended up driving me halfway to my hometown where I grew up, which was Steamboat. My dad came to pick me up halfway. And then I just ended up like sitting in recovery mode at my parents' home, still not understanding, because that was a very serious concussion, like not understanding what had happened yet. It didn't hit me for like a week or so, like the gravity of what actually took place. And meanwhile, I still have this competition. And we had done concussion testing before. This is so funny to tell the story. I'm like, it really feels like a different life. We had done concussion testing before that season. And so then I actually had a baseline to compare to. But it's very common that even with a concussion that you perform better in future testing, even if you had been concussed. And so that wasn't necessarily a super clear line, but I had already paid for my plane ticket. I had already like bought into this whole thing. And it was just kind of like, there isn't anyone else to fill my space. It was a really unique experience that it was our team and not a better representation of the whole US. But it was really like the University of Colorado freestyle team that went. And I think we had some other guest people in too, but essentially the spot, it was already December and that competition was in January. And so it was just kind of like, well, like, what do we do? Or maybe it was in December. Maybe the comp was in December. So either way, I got on the plane and went anyway. And I worked out an arrangement to either take my finals while I was abroad, or to not have finals at all, or to have it adjusted finals because I had just had a concussion. And went there, and all of the jet lag and the concussion symptoms hit way later. And so then I'm starting to understand, like, oh, this was a more serious like brain injury. And essentially I just did straight airs. By the time we get there, I had the line I had been training wasn't even available. It wasn't worth hitting my head again. And so I'm in this very humble space of being part of something really fucking cool, like representing the US in the World University Games, and feeling so fucking lame, to be honest. Just like, this is not what I wanted to bring to the table. And there's all of these different tiers of different, the collegiate nationals are not as intense as like the USSA or the USASA nationals. And so there's different tiers of things. And this really felt like an opportunity for me that actually joined freestyle skiing, even though I've been skiing my whole life. I didn't really get into this. And a lot of women my age, this was kind of that bridge of, there were no free ride teams, didn't exist yet. There were some park and freestyle teams. There weren't that many girls on them. And so I was really part of the generation era of the women joining in high school and in college and playing catch up with things that boys had been doing since they were 7, and trying our best to grow a sport without the resources, with the judgment, with the fun making, with the name calling, etc., all on women and the feminine. And it's so interesting to tell a story now, because this is not my experience of men now at all. And maybe we can get into that as the podcast goes, but it was definitely a prove your worthiness, prove your space. Don't be in your feminine. Don't be soft. Like, really prove yourself and huck yourself. Huck your body off this jump and prove that you belong here, kind of thing. Because there already felt like such an epic gap between the skill sets, and that has closed in the most epic ways since then. But at that point, that wasn't the case. And there was a lot of, I don't know, projection of resent almost from a lot of guys. Like, it would be so easy to be sponsored if I were a girl. There was a competition that was actually felt like it was fueled by the guys instead of by the girls. And then it just was reinforcing itself. So that was the back-to-back injuries. Then I studied abroad. And then I got to ski in Europe. I got to do competitions while I was in Europe. Those were insane, completely changed my life to be able to compete on the freeride qualifying circuit in Europe. Those mountains are no joke. Their 2-star qualifiers are like our 4-star qualifiers in the US. And they were visual inspection only. And on one of them, we had to have a harness in. Like, I had never experienced being on something that exposed before, and being in competition and slough management and plenty of things that I just weren't the thing in Colorado. Like, we didn't have that terrain and those conditions. And it was epic, and it was awesome, and it was so expanding. And on one of those trips in the Alps, I had a silly little fall. A silly fall that wasn't during competition. It was actually during this other fun photo project called Image Quest. And I just fell on my wrist in a weird way. Didn't do much of it other than noticing it like really hurt for a much longer time. And then it turns out, once I got back to the US and actually got to look at everything, that I had torn a ligament in my wrist. And so it was just like all of the ways that I had continue to force myself. And luckily actually study abroad. I got a lot of skiing in, and I got a few more competitions in, but it slowed down the skiing. It slowed down the extreme part, and that kind of transferred into the adrenaline of travel and traveling by yourself. And so this adrenaline junkie just kept changing forms into whatever shape shifting it could go into next. And the following year realized how bad my ankle actually was, how bad the concussion actually was, how bad my wrist actually was. And this is all left side. Everything's left side. The atrophy that occurred in my whole left leg all the way up to my hip. And to fast forward several years, there was an interesting relationship with my body where still in this moment actually, still in realizing that the next year, starting to do PT a year later and realizing, oh, there's so much scar tissue here. And then the remorse and the frustration and the finances being tied in with it. And just this like, why didn't I do this earlier? And I didn't have the finances earlier. And then just it fueled more self-criticism. I would even go to say as far as like self-hatred. I didn't realize until the last few years of my life, honestly, the last 4, that I experienced something called somatic OCD, which explained my whole life. But it was just this like internal, so you imagine like you can generally guess at what like OCD feels like for someone on the outside of like, nope, this needs to be in the right place. It just needs to be just like that. For me, that was like that with sensation. It was like that with popping or cracking joints, with past injury things. I would like click and pop out my ankle. I would do it for my wrist. I would do it for all my fingers, my neck, and my shoulders. There's like a hypermobility, but that turned into a calcification. So everything pops. And so things like yoga were torture, because I could feel how separate, how different, asymmetrical my body was. And I had no skill set, although yoga teaches us how to be present with my body and breathe into these things and accept them. Most yoga classes were also just like doing it for the movement and not for the spiritual benefit. And so I couldn't really comprehend that for a few years. And ultimately, everything I did was for the result. Even the things that were meant to be restorative, they were for the result. And it felt like being caged inside my own skin. So it wasn't until, fast forward a few more years and several more injuries later, like a compression injury, like I compression fractured a vertebrae in my back under rotating a backflip. And then I, on the next day, tomahawked and like probably contributed to that compression fracture. So jumping off all of these cliffs, like doing freeride competition still, and then having to come face to face with like, keep your feet on the ground for 3 more weeks, but it's this competition season and I was fully sponsored at this time. And like the goals in skiing feel like they're happening, and fully sponsored and contracted with Forefront and Saga at the time, and just feeling like, whoa, my goals are going somewhere. And I'm either in the top 10 or near it, or the top 5, not quite podiuming, but I'm in the pocket of being able to get on the freeride world tour at the time. And everyone, like, I had so many friends go to the tour. I had so many friends who made it on the freeride tour, and those were the people I competed against, and those were my friends, and those were a lot of people in Little Cottonwood Canyon. Like, I was in this pocket. I was going to West Coast sessions at Mount Hood as part of the first group of girls to go. And again, there was that balance of like, we're the first group of women to do this, but the skill set range is still so different. Like, women were just starting. There's this whole group of women: Taylor Lundquist, Brooke Potter. Who else did we have? Rachel. Oh my gosh, I'm spacing her last name right now. We've got Emily Tidwell, like a lot of really legendary epic women who have ended up making bigger names for themselves too. Like, that's the pocket that I really got to be in. We're all camping in the mountains together, going up and skiing every day, trying to make these film projects. And then having some more concussions. And those were the things that ultimately were like, Katie, you have to choose your health. And one of my friends, Kelly McKenzie, was in school for neurosciences in particular. And I wish I remembered the very honed in microscopic title of what she does. But I was at the Free Skier magazine testing, and the skis that I clicked into, I just don't think the DINs had been, or the toe height had been adjusted properly, and it was pretty sticky snow, and for whatever reason, the skis stuck. We were just doing this fun little jump line, very tiny, but the skis stuck in this kind of like mashed potato snow, and I mouse trapped, like, boom, just like, no, don't even have a chance to put my hands out. It's just face into the snow. And then, yeah, out of breath, can't catch my breath, lungs are just like out, like loopy again. I'm conscious of everything at this point though, but yeah, like that hurt. And the air was totally knocked out. And then my friend Madeline Dunn was there for that as well. And she's like, girl, you're going to patrol and we're getting oxygen. And was feeling pretty good, had all of my senses. I was just like, okay, yeah, this is probably a concussion, but I'm feeling good. And it was not that long later, like 20 minutes later, like the very classic cartoon twinkles started coming in. And it was just like, fuck. Again. And this is happening. This is where God, source, universe, plus the field is all working with our body, is presenting me with the opportunity, because I had been selected and chosen by the team at Black Diamond to do a catalog shoot for them. And I was recommended by another friend who was a photographer for it, Will Sonder. And so it's just this like dreams coming true of like feeling recognition. I'm finally making moves in this thing that I have been spending my whole life like trying to prove myself in. And he ended up texting saying, hey, this weekend looks good. Can you make it back for the catalog shoot? And it was like the day after I got this concussion. And I had to sit with that, because I'm like, it was going to be a mellow tour, not big shooting. We're mostly like posing, standing with gear, but the fact that it was still in the backcountry and I would be a liability. And so then it became, oh my God, I have to choose my well-being when the biggest opportunity of my, photo career, I should say, catalog career was already handed to me. The skis were already like full head to toe gear for Black Diamond. Here's the skis, like everything was set. And then I just felt like the worst person on the planet, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm the worst. I'm the worst because of this injury. I'm the worst because now I'm inconvenienced for this. Now I'm the worst, and I'll be a liability if I do this shoot. And so I had to own that. And this was really an opportunity to take radical responsibility for where I was at, and told him, like, I'm so sorry. I just got a pretty big concussion and I don't think it's a good idea for me in the backcountry. And he was completely understanding. He's a photographer of athletes in outdoor sports. And he's like, yep, I'm so sorry to hear that. Like, well, don't worry. Like, we'll see if another time lines up, and another time never lined up for that part of the season. And that winter, my ego got obliterated because I had to choose myself. And at this point, how many concussions was that? At this point, this was a decent amount, at least, yeah, at least two big concussions and probably some minor ones. And then the final kind of like straw that broke the camel's back with this was 2 weeks later going to, kind of feel like I'm getting a little bit of redemption. I got the wild card to go compete at one of the events in Squaw, and it was right after um, the Payne McShlonky downhill event, which is to honor Shane McConkey, and everyone has ski blades on, and then you just full force like Chinese downhill. Everyone goes down the mountain. You're wearing costumes. It's ridiculous. It's really fun. And I had gotten second place the year prior and first place in the switch slalom and all these ridiculous events that were super fun and just goofy and meant to bring levity and lightness to skiing, and really to honor like the spirit of Shane McConkey. And I ended up just doing like a little boop, which it's almost impossible not to fall. We were skiing a powder day on ski blades, like from the top of some pretty technical terrain, just absolute ridiculous stuff. And I just did a little bit of a side knock that wouldn't have been anything if I hadn't already been concussed 2 weeks earlier. So then it reignited that concussion. I ended up down in the mountain. Fortunately, I had already been in this position of preparing to go to this quantum healing certification. So this is where the worlds overlap. And I'm starting to dip into this realm. I'm doing this big detox for this. So luckily I'm already not partying. I'm not drinking. I'm not doing anything. However, this did reignite that concussion. I'm sitting there at the bottom of the mountain, seeing the splotches in my vision and realizing what happened. And so I'm like, cool, well, I'm done skiing for the day. Went and sat on my friend's couch, listened to binaural beats and like harmonizing frequencies that, again, I'm only barely tiptoed into this realm. I think that was like the first year I had been in it. And that was really the big, like, okay, you need to chill for the rest of the season. Those lessons continued to come. I still had a few more injuries before it finally like landed for me. And honestly, even like just a few years ago, I had an SI joint injury where every single time my body's been like slower, even slower. Nope, slow, even all the way down, even farther. Nope, all the way. Nope, basically to a 0 point, which felt like absolute death for someone that was a multi-sport athlete and worked all of the jobs and had, all of the adrenaline, and really so much of my worthiness was based off of my doing and accomplishment and my ability to send it and get back up and all of these things. And so on every level, like I just told you the storyline of injuries, like there's more to it from different angles, but that was the thing that really kicked it off. And in the slowing down for each of these injuries, I learned more about my hormones. I learned more about my nervous system regulation. I learned more about how out of balance I had lived my entire life and how normalized that is, especially in like mountain outdoor radical extreme culture that also drinks and parties. And bit by bit by bit, like more ego death, more ego death, more ego death, and ultimately finding myself in a totally new realm of nervous system regulation, cycle syncing, root cause healing, and all of those things like weren't things that I looked for out of like, ooh, fun, I want to learn that. It was out of absolute necessity. Like, oh, I can't function this way anymore. And I can't pretend to go back at this point. I can't pretend to go back and try to just build muscle on top of that old injury. Like now, and this is the fun part where the body and the energetic start to overlap, I need to not just rest, I need to go into the fascial tissue and work on releasing everything that initially I thought were just injuries and then ultimately ended up being identities, wounds, patterns, etc., that had been stored in the fascial network in my body, and learn how to be with those intense emotions that I literally couldn't bear to be with the first time I had to do PT. And I got worn down to such a point that I had no choice and had to learn how to embrace it and be with the emotional releases and regulate myself from there and learn how to love myself in this expression that I never wanted to be in. And then ultimately find liberation and freedom and like juicy feminine expression and so many things from there. So it was a whole ass thing.
What a story. I've never heard that one before. So I'm glad that I got to hear the inside scoop, and
Yeah.
you're just a badass. Wow, that's amazing. And it's insane to see how life is trying to wake us up, you know? Like it takes looking back in hindsight to really be like, wow, look at the pattern here. Look at every way that my body was trying to communicate with me, right? That life was trying to wake me up to not kill myself, you
Yeah.
know? And I'm so curious to say, because it sounds like you really started to explore the connection between your injuries and how this was showing up in your body and what it meant on a deeper level. And you said a lot of it was happening on your left side. What came of that? What was that connected to?
Yeah. So it ended up like my body ended up being like the physical representation of what was happening for me on like the polarity level of feminine and masculine. So I had a lot of wounded feminine that was being overcompensated for by my masculine. And then when we overcompensate for things, we underutilize this and underdevelop our feminine even more. But then we have overcompensation injuries. And this is so cool, the body is so brilliant and wise and is honestly the perfect blueprint for all other aspects of our healing. It's been like, this is where I look back in hindsight, like, thank God I had to go through all of this because it is the perfect blueprint to see how all other wounding, healing, emotional, and energetic works, and how to have grace with it. So, with this, every part of our body loves to default to the more developed muscle groups, the bigger muscle groups, the ones that are stronger, and this is the same for our life. We default to the neural pathways that are the most developed. We default to the coping mechanisms and the habits and the ways of being and the beliefs that are stronger, that have just been more developed because it's efficient. It's efficient energy usage. And so our body, for instance, like for my left side, would default to these bigger muscle groups. But because I had an injury and was not quite activating my muscles the way in alignment, and then we get into all this nerdy shit, I'm so excited, um, in alignment with what proper muscle firing and actual like proper alignment within my own skeleton was. So my body's finding a different way to get the same signal through and just like create a co-adaptive movement pattern. And so in every other area of life, that would be like a coping mechanism. Like, this is how I still get this thing done. I use this thing, or I need sugar, or I have this distractive tool, or I need to do this thing in order to accomplish this. And on the like this overworked side of the masculine is still accomplishing the things. And so from an outside perspective, it looks like I'm still getting things done. And so why would you question that? Like, why would you question this is the way that it works, so I'm going to keep doing the thing that works? And we do this with our businesses. We do this with money patterns. We do this with our relationships. We do this with food. It's like, oh, that seems to work, so I'm just going to keep doing that. And ultimately, if that thing is not in your best interest for your life, it's going to stop working in that way at a certain point because you need to kind of be forced lovingly into seeing that there are actually limitless ways for that thing to be accomplished, and there is an aligned way for you. And yeah, for me, that was looking at the way that this left side ended up representing, like, I don't know how to rest. I don't know how to value my beingness. I only know how to value my doingness. I don't know who I am unless I'm accomplishing these things and really sending it. Like, I got the nickname Scorpion Queen when I compression fractured my back because it was a scorpion when I did it. And it was just like, wow, this whole identity was built on this overexertion that wasn't balanced. And so there was the valuing myself, there's valuing femininity, there's valuing softness, there's valuing sensuality. Like, I actually not just neglected those, I actively suppressed those things because they weren't valuable in like the culture of skiing in the same way. Like, there were points where if women were overutilizing their femininity to get sponsorships, then you would be undercutting all of the work that women have been doing to be taken seriously. So then there's actually the subconscious conditioning that says, that's also playing out in contrast actually to everything else that says, be this way to be loved, be this way as a woman to be loved. And then it's in direct contrast with the masculine in these sports that says, no, suppress that, don't honor that, because you're undercutting the respect that we've been working so hard to earn and to be taken seriously. So I have this internal tug of war, energetically, emotionally, identity wise, that is showing up in my body and is being compounded by it until I actually learn, like, okay, what needs to happen for me to learn how to rest, to learn how to be with my emotions, to learn how to decondition myself of all the things I had lived evidence of and I didn't have any other evidence of, until I ended up finding mentors online through the algorithm. Like, I wasn't in this world. I was not searching for spiritual things. Like, I did yoga for the practice, not for the spirituality. And so it really was this woman that I had met at a college graduation party, and she's been my mentor, like, on and off for years at this point, is Aislinn Walton in Abundance Witch. She actually lives in Boulder. And she had become a coach. And she popped up on my Instagram feed at the perfect moment for me, where I was in this space of, well, what do I do now? Like, I'm still a sponsored athlete, but I don't feel like I'm being invited and included in all these things. And I also have all this untapped potential from my college, from all these other things from my degree that I feel like I'm not living into. I'm in limbo right now of knowing that there's more for me and not knowing what that is. And her course popping up at the exact perfect moment for me. And it being, I think it was called Wild, Wealthy, and Worthy. And it was talking about entrepreneurship, feminine entrepreneurship. And I was like, what? I've never heard of this. And I've never heard of women cycle syncing. And I've never heard of women loving their period. And I've never heard of, I was just like, this whole area of looking at shining light on shadows. I had never heard that term before. I never knew the word manifestation. Like, I ended up, that's another long, funny story. I ended up at a 0 point, bottom of the barrel moment just before joining her course. And it was just such a completely different, like, again, life cornering me through injuries, through depression, through feeling like the life path I'd been working so hard for wasn't working. That then I found this work because I just knew that a 9-to-5 job wasn't going to be it for me. And it was actually that course, it was that year that those bigger concussions happened, and that course where that was the, like, that was all within the same year. That was like one winter into the next winter, that there's now overlap of worlds. Worlds are starting to bridge. And that was the first time I had ever looked at my inner critic, my self-worth, the stories. I had no concept for any of these things. Like, the stories that rule our life. Like, what do you mean? This is just my lived experience. What do you mean I have a belief structure that is creating my reality? Like, huh? And so that course really flipped everything for me in a way that, because I was able to finally look at shadows as like the, introduction into shadow work, the energy that returned to my body within the next 3 months was like insane. I had gone from being like, I don't know what to do with my life. I just don't know, and I'm figuring it out. And it looks like skiing isn't working the way I thought it would, and I'm feeling unfulfilled, to like, now I call them channeling and downloads. But at the time I was just like, what the fuck is happening? So many ideas. I have so many, like, so much just life in my body. Like, what is going on? And it was because I cleared out these like shadows and gunks that had been in my field and in my emotions that I had never looked at. So the parallel here to loop this all in is that was the first time, as far as inner inquiry, that I had done anything that wasn't my default movements. That was the first time I had moved my like internal landscape differently than my main go-to habitual thoughts and feelings about myself and about the world. So it was like, I like to call it neurological bushwhacking. So it was so uncomfortable to look at and think and feel differently. And that is almost the exact correlation to building stabilizer muscles and doing PT work and doing fascial release in your physical body. Because it's just like, oh, I'm not wired to default to these stabilizer muscles. I'm not wired to move in this way. I'm not like, I have to build this wiring that wasn't there before. And so that was happening in my body and in my internal emotional energetic landscape at the same time. And the discomfort was the same. It was the same discomfort. It was the same new neurological pathways being wired, one from like my actual physical like muscles and neurons firing within past injuries and new muscle building and new stabilizer muscles. And it really was the process of doing these at the same time that made me realize, I'm like, this is the same. It's the same. It's the same. This internal process is the same way as healing your body and its needs for functional movement, its needs for myofascial release, its needs for working with stabilizer muscles, its needs for mobility, and not just flexibility and strength. Because that metaphor of flexibility and strength is what most people think are like the two duality, that there's actually a third way, and it's functional movement. And so that third way is the thing that, like, how do I create balance between, oh, my feminine and my masculine in my life? How do I accomplish things from energetic alignment? How do I have a business that's in alignment with my femininity? And it becomes this both and of, whoa, how do I move in this new way that is so counter to my old muscle patterns on that broader life sense? So it was a whole excavation. It was like taking myself down to the foundation. It was a demolition.
Yeah, and there's so much to be said to like the death and rebirth cycles that happen there, right?
Yeah.
The complete like ego death that had to happen because our identities become so enmeshed in, especially when you're on such a path of like creating a career for yourself out of the doing and like the skill that you have, it becomes your entire life. And for that to then just be demolished and built up again is like, I just want to acknowledge you for that. And I'm sure there's people listening that can relate in their own ways. And it feels like a death because it is. It's a death to your identity.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, where do you go from there? Right. But like sharing a story like this is why I love podcasts, because it's like a personal story allows to like serves as expanders for others who are on a similar journey of like, there's a reason for this. Like life is pushing you in a direction. And it's beautiful to hear too, that the moment it's like energetically opened up to like, now what? Like even asking a different question instead of being like, why me? Why is this all falling apart? Asking now what? Like what's next? Even if it comes from a place of fear, it's still asking a different question. Open yourself up energetically, and then this course lands, right? And it's just like, it's such a divine orchestration, and I've seen that time and time again in my own journey. And so it's beautiful to see in hindsight kind of the evolution of all of it, and the connection between the body and the emotional mental states is, I mean, that was such a fascinating, and still is such a fascinating topic for me, because it's all so connected and it's so intelligent. It's crazy, right? And even just the way that it all shows up in your body somatically, the emotional and mental, even subconscious things that you're just not even aware of, how they physically manifest and cascade down into our physiology is insane. And we can use that once we start to understand it, we can work with it. And so that's kind of where I wanted to go into next, because I know somatics is now such a big part of what you teach and love to talk about. And so yeah, curious to hear kind of where you want to take this, but I want to share with the listeners a little bit more on how to bridge that gap and use the body as a vessel to heal, to become healthier, to become more of a walking representation of that which they want to call in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so fun. This is where it gets like gamified. Once you get into the space where you're like, okay, how do I utilize these tools? And you work through that initial kind of like gunk of like, this is weird. Like, I think that needs to be acknowledged. Like, it's going to be weird. It's definitely going to be weird. If you're not already doing it, it will force you to face off with a part of yourself that doesn't want to look weird and doesn't want to like get it wrong, or like, this is why being surrounded by people who embrace their weird is literally the best, fastest time collapsing quantum leap thing that you can do. This is where like, yeah, community of people who are doing similar things to you will be your biggest ally in this, because you're going to be facing off with every part of you that had to learn how to move and talk and be in a certain way in order to be liked, in order to be accepted, in order to feel belonging. Somatics is going to unravel all of that, like all of it. Like you're going to move and tone and make noises and have like these fascial practices and breath work and all of these things that are going to be like nothing you've ever done before. And it's going to directly confront the part of you that's like, this is weird. What am I doing? Am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? I would say that's the biggest bubble of things that like is inhibiting people from embracing what somatics has to offer. And so it's good to know that on the front end, because if you don't know that that's going to be a thing, then you just keep bumping up against it. And so the first thing that is going to happen as you embark on any of this is like breaking down the weird wall. And like the more you can be around people who get weird and who love getting weird, and there's this whole like, that's why like the festival culture is so fun, and ecstatic dance and whatever it is that you can do to massage the, like, it will be a somatic experience. You will be uncomfortable. And so whatever you can do to massage the edges of that discomfort, knowing that like you're actually releasing old patterning, literally just in doing that, and putting yourself in uncomfortable positions where everything about your past identity is challenged, that is somatics. Your body is revealing to you like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Oh, I'm believing this about them. I'm believing this about myself. It is showing you everything that you believe about yourself. Like you don't need to sit and be a like a Buddhist monk in a cave to get these answers. You get them through your life. Like your life will reveal these things to you. But you have to get out of those bigger muscle pattern groups of the things that you always do in the way that you always know yourself, in order for that, like, oh, what is this? I don't have this stabilizer muscle to be revealed to you. And so I love Pilates. It's been really pivotal for my healing on every level. But you can bring, like, there are certain somatic things that you can do, like dance and like ecstatic dance and like so many different, like I love a solar plexus release. I love body shaking. There are specific things that we would consider somatics. But what I think makes it more accessible is that when you put yourself in positions that you are not already stable in, you will be revealed where you are being destabilized. And there's so much wisdom in that, because now you know, oh, this is my belief about that. Oh, this is my belief about those people. This is my belief about my body or my potential or any of that. And it is being shown to you by you putting your physical body in the spaces and places and rooms that ignite it for you. And in that, then you can use tools to be like, okay, well, what if I stay here and breathe? Okay, well, what if I try on this character even more? What if this can happen just by wearing things that you typically wouldn't say, that's not my style. Guess what? This is a great somatic practice to put yourself in the embodied practice of, well, what if you put that thing on and went out to a festival? Or what if you put that thing on and took yourself out on a date? So there's like a way to have the somatic feedback of life be communicating with you literally at all times. And this is something that I think I wish I had known earlier, and I try to convey to all of my clients, because plant medicine is amazing when done respectfully and in right relationship. And these big cathartic releases are outstanding. And life is revealing yourself to you in literally every moment, every single moment. So I like to call it like somatic, like toothbrushing or flossing, because this is stuff you just do every day. You just do it every day. And if you are aware of it, then you can use that as a tool to like collapse time around whatever your goals are. And so it means, and this is where extreme sports was really such a blessing for me, to put yourself actively in a state of play in conditions that are uncomfortable. And so whether that's for, the literal example for skiing was, okay, well, let me go jump off this thing that's scary, or let me be outdoors in this winter storm or in the cold in general. And same with mountain biking and all these things in nature where you're playing with the elements and you're learning about yourself from the way you engage with those elements. The blessing of that community, that I would say is also part of the entrepreneurial community and spiritual community, is that you get a group of people who get off on challenging themselves. And if you can blend the playful challenge of treating it like a game with the weirdness and the self-reflection, that is like this ultimate trifecta of, oh, okay, now I've gamified this thing that could otherwise be very isolating and lonely. I'm with people who are like curious, and we've all worked through, or we're working through our weirdness, or ooh, that's an edge for me, and we know how to communicate that, but we're still loving each other, like, whoa, that's an edge for me, okay, interesting. And that's, if you are a person who is just embarking on this journey and you don't have anyone around you who holds this space for you, I would say that's your biggest priority. That's going to be your biggest like hindrance, or permission slip, is to just go be in spaces. So if that means that you go to a retreat, or you go to a static dance, or you go to these spaces where you feel really out of place, that will be the fastest way, because you're somatically experiencing the discomfort that wants to move through you and say, actually, I am safe in this new place. There is belonging in this new group of people, in this new expression of myself that I don't even know yet. And it kind of fast tracks the level of safety in your body to be like, oh, I can keep going. I can keep exploring this. And then when that's set as like a foundation, then it's like game on. Like, I can go into everything. I can, like, I have conversations with girlfriends who are like, whoa, how was your eclipse? And I'm like, oh man, I had the craziest like yoni de-armoring experience. Like, those are conversations that I get to have with the people, with my closest girlfriends. And honestly, like, that's probably something I would say to anyone at this point, because that's a level of comfort within my own body that I've gained. And there's no way that Katie 7 years ago, she would have been like a fly on the wall, like, what are they talking about? What did they just say? What even is that? And because that's how I was when women were even talking about their menstrual cycles and the powers within their menstrual cycles. I was like, excuse me, you love this? Hold on. What? And I didn't even ask for a while. I just let myself be a peripheral to like the community of women who are talking about cycle syncing, talking about how to use their ovulation phase, how to honor, like how to use the luteals as superpower, how to brainstorm and plan during follicular, like how do I utilize all my phases as like bio optimization tools for my life and my purpose. What? Like, so I had to be a peripheral fly on the wall to those conversations before I felt comfortable enough like going in. But it really was being surrounded by, or in online spaces with people where that was a normal conversation, for me to even dare to tiptoe into the experience in my own body. Like, I needed to create the like communal social safety before I felt like, oh, I can go there. And then when you go there and you've gone on this process of like continual, for the rest of your life, evolution of owning yourself, then you no longer need that as the safety net. It's also become your norm, and you have community that holds you there, but you also don't need it anymore, and you own yourself even in the spaces where that's not the norm. And so a metaphor to be placed to that is like, that's like the Pilates class. It's like, oh, let me go to the Pilates class where I'm gonna have like this leg wobble in this shake that I'm like, what, there's a muscle there? I didn't even know that I could flex that part of my body. What do you mean? There's a muscle that I can flex in that part of my hip and my butt? What? And you get sewing machine leg and you're just like, what's happening right now? And it's because that's a new muscle group that you're learning to fire. Then your whole being starts to function with things that you didn't realize were numb or turned off. And then all of a sudden you have like access to more of yourself, and you have more movement available through all parts of your being, like not just the broader conditioned muscle groups, but all of these smaller stabilizing muscles. You have more movement available to you in your experience of yourself. And then you go out of the Pilates class and you're like, oh, wow, now I'm skiing, now I'm mountain biking, now I'm dancing, now I'm doing whatever it is. I'm using all of myself now to access that, instead of just the main muscle groups and overexhausting them. And so hopefully that metaphor is landing, because that's like a few different things being weaved into a broader metaphor. But yeah.
No, I love that metaphor, and I love how much your journey has woken you up to the connection between the mind and the body, and using that analogy as you move through life. It makes so much sense. And I've once, like, it also reminds me of the analogy of like people when they get older, you know, if they're still it's like a flexible body is the same representation as a flexible mind.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if we keep moving our bodies and using the muscles and opening, then we are flexible even at an older age. And that's what a lot of people get really rigid even when they in their,
Yes.
thought processes and beliefs, especially when they're older. And it's like that flexibility and mobility of the mind as well. And so it is such a beautiful connection. And I just want to double click on like the result being freedom,
Hmm.
liberation is what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
Somatically, like not being rigid and closed off and like tense and tight, but open and confident and just at ease in your body because you have worked through the kinks and you have exposed yourself enough to flex those all those new little muscles and really open everything up. And then also that being a parallel to the mental emotional realm is so it's amazing to me. And um yeah, I want to, before we dive into cycle syncing, which is something I really want to talk to you about, um I just think that there's something so powerful to double click on here about putting yourself into uncomfortable situations and
Hmm.
learning and using that as information to learn about yourself and grow, right? Because I think what happens for so many people, and myself included sometimes, is that we get really comfortable in our routines and like, this is what I wear, this is what I eat, this is what I who I hang out with, right? These are the environments where I feel comfortable, and then I never step out of that. But with that, you are not growing and you are not facing the very things that are triggering, that are still holding you rigid. And it reminds me of a quote by Peter Crone that says, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal where you're not free, right? Which is amazing because it's like, oh yeah, you're rubbing up against a trigger, against something that's uncomfortable. It's not like, oh, that's a sign that I've stepped out of like where I should be and where I belong. No, like, oh, use that as information. Use the body and what it's telling you, right? The contraction, the tightness, the nerves. Like, can we use that to actually like lean in more and get curious so that we can open that up and I was going to say lube it up,
Yeah.
so it can move a little better.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, I guess I just want to hear you talk a little bit more about the process of like putting yourself into uncomfortable situations on purpose to get that feedback to then work with yourself, because I think that that's where a lot of people are like, they're walking through life, they hit an uncomfortable corner and they're like, oh no, let me go back this way, and then they don't grow and they don't actually have the manifestations come through that they desire.
Yeah. I would say this is, yeah, to echo a little bit, just like that, the last topic leading into this one, because it really is like so overlapping, is find one thing. I would say to start, because there's so many ways you could go with this, is find the one thing that you keep saying that you want to do that is actually like a desire, but it's a scary desire. And it's probably something that's been like a desire that you've been putting off for a long time. And you say, like, oh, one day I would love to learn that. Find that one thing because it's already uncomfortable or you would be doing it already. And so practice this with the things that have the outcome that you want and build the muscle into being able to lean into the things that are not the things that you want. But just like anything, I like to use the metaphor for surfing, for instance. Surfing is a sport that I would love to get better at, but I've never lived by the ocean. So every time I've gone, it's really been like almost restarting every time. But my metaphor for it is, I would love to learn how to surf because I also experience Raynaud's, which is like an autoimmune disease that it's weird to say that because I don't really identify with it that way, but it's extreme vasoconstriction of your digits. And so my fingers and toes will go like very white, like the blood flow won't reach there. So going into the cold and learning how to surf in an ocean that is scary, and I've never lived near the ocean, that's like three huge discomfort things happening at the same time. So what could I do for me to lean into this desire that I have is, okay, can I go somewhere warm where the water's warm? Like that alone would make it possible for me to lean into the process of learning when I'm not also fighting my body's literal fight or flight response of not just the fear of surfing, but also I'm cold. This is dangerous. And so it's tapping in on like most things that, like, say you want to learn pottery, or say there's a painting class, or say like there's this dance class, or it's a mobility thing. I'm trying to think of like photography, all of these things that might be on your list of like, oh, I want to learn that. I want to get better. And there's that classic phrase of like, oh, I would love to go to yoga, but I'm not flexible enough. That is just like, dog.
How do you think you get the
How do you-
flexibility?
Exactly. Like, hold on a second. And so it's nice to put yourself in a space where like, if you can vet out, and this is the truth, like there are plenty of yoga classes that feel like a competition. We'll just keep using yoga as an example. So if you can go into something and vet it out in a way where someone has said, oh, it's wonderful for beginners, or this is like, yeah, for anyone who's newer at this and wants to be in a group of people who are also new at it. Or I did this with partner dance classes. I did this with country swing and with West Coast swing classes. It was like, I have been saying my whole life that I want to get good at these things. I grew up dancing, like choreographed dancing and all sorts of different things I did ballet, I did modern, I did jazz, I did hip hop, I did African dance, like belly dance, all of the dances. Again, I was an overcommitted to all of the extracurricular activities in every way. But I always wanted to partner dance. And there was a point, and actually this is a really great story that'll help put things into context, because we can go our whole lives saying that we wanted to learn something and that we wanted to get uncomfortable. And you can either do some thinking and thought processing about like, okay, when I reach, my deathbed, what will I have regretted not trying? And that maybe might be enough to get someone to think like, okay, maybe I will sign up for this year. One of the things that was the most painful aha moment for me in wanting to learn how to swing dance, like country swing dance, was first I got to experience it with a friend who was a great lead. And I always wanted to, but I always felt like, oh, nervous, squeamish, like, oh no, I'm not good at it yet. Again, you need to go do the thing to get good at it. So like, oh, I'm not flexible enough for yoga is like falls into that category of like, but because of him being a friend, us being surrounded by people I felt comfortable with, and us just being casually at this bar in Jackson, he was such a great lead that I was like, I feel like such a good dancer with you as a lead. And there's so many metaphors for this for feminine and masculine too, and just the practice of doing something uncomfortable and being seen doing something uncomfortable, having someone that I trusted with me just was like, wait, I want to do that again. And other people who weren't good, like other girlfriends that were not good at dancing either. We weren't dancers, but we were dancing with this guy who was a good lead. And it was like, well, shit, that was fun. Okay, shit, let's do that again. Wait, like my turn. I want to go again. And it just became this lighthearted play. And he was a friend, Kyle Smain, who lived in South Lake Tahoe. And I asked him, like, how did you get so good at this? And he's like, my fiance and I whip out YouTube videos and practice on our porch. And I'm like, shut up. That's the cutest thing ever. And he was like, yeah, I would love, at the time I was dating someone and lived in Tahoe in the summers. And he's like, yeah, you two should come down and we can all do swing dancing. And that was a desire that I had that just kept staying in the peripheral of like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Oh yeah, I want to do that, but I'm busy and there's so much on my plate. And so how do we break out of the thing that I always do with the people I always do those things with and the version of me I always know? And it didn't end up happening that summer. And again, you could do that for the rest of your life. And what ended up being really the glass shattering moment for me is that next winter, Kyle passed away in an avalanche. And I was smacked in the face with realizing, oh my God, that was at my fingertips available for me the whole time. Like 30-minute drive away. Could have made time for it countless times throughout the summer. And now this person that ignited this spark in me to want to learn how to do this is not on this plane anymore. And I could go into other, like so many excuses that we all have. We're like, oh, well, my partner didn't want to do that with me, or my friend said they would, but then they backed out on me. That something that significant hit me hard enough that I was like, I am not going to go the rest of my life not doing this thing that I said was important to me, especially now that I've lost somebody who was the spark and the spark for that. And like keeping, the memory of someone alive and the spirit of someone alive. And so that was the thing that pushed me over the edge to get over myself and go alone. And so there's one thing to be said for having the community that like initially gets your foot in the door to get over yourself and like looking weird. And then there's also the very real smack in the face of like, we aren't here that long. We don't know how long we're going to be here. And tomorrow's not guaranteed. So what the fuck am I doing? Actually. And that pushed me over the edge to sign up for dance classes alone and sign up for like an 11-week course and go to the free swing dancing lessons for country swing and just get over myself. And when I got myself in the room of beginners, I realized all of us are literally feeling the same way. All of us are feeling the same way. It's not like I'm going to a room of professional dancers. I'm going to beginner classes. All of us are beginners. And being that, like, I've also taught skiing for 14 years. And so I am consistently in the space of being the teacher for people who are beginners at things and all the way up to the more advanced ladders. But it was a way to put myself in the position that I am always putting people in as well. But it was totally initiated by like the loss of a friend and realizing I had this at my fingertips the whole time and just I didn't prioritize it. And then when it came down to it, that was the answer. I didn't prioritize it. I could make all the excuses and I could also see how all of those excuses were invalid at the same exact time. And ultimately, I didn't prioritize it. And I never had the opportunity again to dance with Kyle. But because of that, I danced like crazy and decided to get over myself on the embarrassment and get over myself in the learning process and get over myself. Like it's just such a process of getting over who I think I am already. And being like, and one of the frames that has been so helpful for me is like, I'm getting to know this new version of me. I don't know her yet. I'm getting to know her. And so of saying, oh, that's not who I am. I'm not good at this. Like literally just changing the language into I'm getting to know this version of me. I'm excited to get to know this version of me. I'm getting to know her. This is still a version of me I'm getting to know. Like changing just the language itself creates so much freedom in the way that you pursue things. And so those few things like colliding into each other of losing someone, feeling the fragility of life and making it playful, getting in a room of other beginners and having different language. Like that was the perfect storm. And you don't need all of those things. At a certain point, it comes down to you and your willingness and your willingness to be with sensation that is like, and being with people who know that that's actually good. Like you being in this, what is this feeling means that it's working instead of that I'm not doing something right or this is wrong or it's bad and I just want to slink back into my comfort zone. Like when you're around people who know that like, okay, oh my God, it's like that Eminem song, like palms are sweaty, mom's spaghetti. Like, okay, I'm nervous. This is scary. And I'm going to go do it. Like the more you can be around people who are constantly at that edge, even just in the most like playful, innocent ways, the more you calibrate your nervous system to be able to handle that and to be around other people who have risked it. And then you see, because you're a beginner at something, you get so good so quick that's just that like the most gain in any skill set is at the beginning. And it actually slows down as you become more expert in it, as you gain more advanced skills. And so it's kind of that thing that keeps you in it. You're like, whoa, I see myself getting so much better in this short time frame. And that is like the proper dopamine when we're not in this dopamine addicted landscape. Like that's the actual dopamine that keeps you doing uncomfortable things. So I guess something I would tack onto that is that dopamine resetting yourself as much as you can so we can get back to like the most evolutionary advantageous ways of dopamine existing in our system instead of being flooded with dopamine every day. Because you used to get dopamine by doing the scary thing and having the, oh, I did it. And that commits you to want to do it again. Now we're being flooded with dopamine just through our screens the first thing we do when we wake up. And so we're not putting ourselves in the position that would otherwise give us that evolutionary experience. And so we're getting the hormone benefit, which isn't a benefit when we flood ourselves with it, without the action that led to that benefit. So if we can like tone it back, or you can get an app like Opal or things that help you temper, a manufactured synthetic way of experiencing those dopamine highs, will help you push you back into the true experience of it. And even if that's also just listening to people who are athletes, listening to entrepreneurs, listening to creatives, and listening to their process, and get fascinated with the process, because they're nerdy like me, are nerdy about the process. And then you can see like, oh, the point isn't how it looks or the achievement. The point is this excited journey of like, oh, how do I figure this out? How do I play with this? How do I move like that now? Whoa, that was interesting. Shit, that kind of sucked. Okay, back again. And then that becomes your state of being. It's that combination of getting yourself in the room, if not at least being a fly in the wall, like I had described for women talking about cycle syncing and all those things, where you're in the room with the conversation about like people who are already embodied in that thing and how they relate to it. So if you can't find yourself quite committing to the big leap into something new yet, like just getting around people who talk about it in the way that they talk about it, and you get used to like, how do they relate to this thing, will give your social nervous system, because we're all social beings and we've evolved to be in belonging and community. And so it is a really big deal for our like safety signals. That will help give you the nudge to be like, okay, I'll try it. Okay, I'll do the scary thing. But ultimately, it's still your willingness that breaks through. And so whatever part of that story clicks for you, whether it's needing to lose someone significant to actually get over yourself and do it, or it's the playful community, or it's the room of beginners, or it's being the fly on the wall for somebody, like, I don't know how many things I just said in there that are factors in this, but whatever things stood out for you as a listener, trust that and move with it, because that's probably your gateway that feels the most approachable to you, and the rest will become more available. But like, start with the first breadcrumb. Like take that first step, and the rest will start to massage out. And just know that you're gonna have the, oh my God, I'm nervous and this is scary feeling, and that means you're doing it right, not that you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many nuggets in there, and I trust that whatever is meant to land for each person will. It's usually how it works. Just to wrap up this piece, is there anything somatically that you would give out as a tip? Because I think a lot of people are very disconnected from their bodies, and so when they start feeling a lot of sensation, it's too overwhelming and they don't know how to work with it, and so it pulls them back too, right? Because I think there's these two components. There's the mindset of like, at some point you just had, right? Like sometimes you need a reminder, like, hey, life is not guaranteed. Get over yourself. Sometimes we just need to do that. And then also remembering that, like, the uncomfortable feelings don't mean that you're not capable, or that you shouldn't be there, right? There's the mindset work that's really important, but then there's also the actual physical somatic reactions that happen that I think can hold people back. And so I'm curious if you have any like small tips and tricks for people who want to get uncomfortable, but they just can't handle, they think they can't handle the reactions somatically.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, I would microdose yourself. And whether that means like literally or the metaphorical way. But put yourself in, like, do things that are the things you're doing every day normally, but like do your hair differently, or wear different kinds of earrings, or wear an outfit you normally wouldn't wear. And so don't change. Like, you don't need to like disrupt your whole life, but do something that is just a little bit of a challenge, just a little bit of and notice how like your heart races and you overthink about things. And like, if you're, first of all, choosing to do it intentionally, knowing that like, okay, what might come up. And then when those sensations and feelings come up, I love to give my mind a different job, because our mind loves to dig. Our mind loves to dig, sometimes itself into a hole. And we can't actually get rid of our mind. And I don't think that's the goal. I think it's, can we give our mind a different job? Because it's excellent at what it does. Can we give it a different job? And that's something that I learned from one of my mentors, Matteo McGee. And he's just like, give your mind the job of noticing. So instead of thinking about or analyzing, give it the job of noticing. And so what I have had clients do for this is, discomfort when it comes to like just feminine embodiment and like showing up in your femininity and your radiance and your receivership, is I'll have clients go take themselves on dates, like wear the thing that is an edge that's already in your closet. You own it. It's already a belonging of yours. So go wear that thing, take yourself out, go get like a mocktail by yourself. So you can't fill in the gaps with the kind of like nervous conversation or whatever it is that you would have with your girlfriends or your guy friends, whoever's listening to this, and go with yourself, and either with a notebook. Notebooks are great. Sometimes we just still need our phones, and pull up the notes on your phones or with a notebook. And I just want you to go through the whole experience of getting yourself like a snack, a snack and a tasty drink, and just notice. Just notice what's coming up. Notice the stories. Notice give your mind the job of noticing, almost like you're, I don't know, an Inspector Gadget investigator, like what's going on here? And like, okay, I've got a tightness in my chest, and I notice I'm looking around the room a lot, and I notice that I'm fidgeting, and I notice that, oh, this story is coming up, and I notice that I think that person's judging me. And so give your mind a job to notice things so it doesn't just spiral, because when we don't know how to acknowledge, it turns into story that then fuels that feedback loop in our body with sensation, that then it's like, the sensation was proved right. That is happening. And then we go into even more fight or flight, tension. I don't know what to do here. I just can't do this. Get me out of here. So give it a different job of noticing. And I really like a few different practices. One is body shaking. I've literally done this in so many public bathroom stalls. Just go to the bathroom and literally just jump it down and shake and make weird noises and go, ah. If you don't feel like you can do that, because that can even be an edge for people, is you can do like a little shoulder shimmy. Sighing audibly activates your vagus nerve. And like that can even be such a thing for people. Being heard in our sounds is such a thing, especially in like the feminine descent awakening journey. So sighing, visualizing roots going from your tailbone or from your feet, going down, 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 down to the center of the earth, and asking like, can I compost this? Like sending any of those things that you're noticing, like, okay, thank you. Thanking it tells your nervous system this is safe to be here. And then you can ask, there's so many, like Ho'oponopono is another one, but thanking it and asking the earth, like, can you compost this for me? Because she wants your compost. She wants compost. Just think about how much the earth is not receiving compost on a literal level with food, but also an energetic level of the ways that we numb and suppress and distract. She loves this. She's the ultimate alchemizer. And so energetically, you can thank the thing that is surfacing, notice it, extract the lesson, and then be like, Ma, can you help me compost this? Can you help hold this with me? Not to like get rid of it, get it out of me. This is bad. But like, can you breathe this with me? Can you compost this with me? Can you hold this with me? Instead of I'm all alone, I need to cast this away. I need to reject this. It's like, can I welcome this? And can I ask for support on this energetic plane? And I'm trying to think of things you can do in a public space. There's plenty of other wacky stuff that I love that we can do in like the privacy or with friend groups that we love. And then we can get really weird and like, and do a whole bunch of great stuff. But as far as like tiptoeing into it and being in public, tapping, like EFT tapping in your car is also great. So like move through, you can look up, there's so many, I'm sure, YouTube videos that'll go into explaining the process of tapping. That's something you can do in your car. And Another thing is, I learned this from a mentor, Melanie Ann Lair, who I don't have anything near. I have this thing, I have my copper coil. Is she would be out at like dinner dates and would have the stuff like coming up in her heart and just being like, ah, like okay, and she would like channel it into her fork that she was having at this dinner, and like moving it into her fork and like breathing for her body, choosing like who do I want to be in this moment, feeling all the feelings, but like channeling them into something. Like, okay, let me put it in this item for now. Like I'm in a public place, I can't move this way I would like to move it. Can I have an item or something that is like sacred or important to me that I can use as a like, I'm gonna put this in here for now. And that doesn't mean that I'm not gonna feel it later. It means I'm using this now as something to like, almost as like a, if you've read any of like the like Akatar or Fourth Wing books or like very smart things, it's called like a conduit. It's like, okay, this is helping me, whether even it's just a placebo effect or on an actual energetic level. I have plenty of medicine pieces I've activated. Then we can get into the whole like medicine woman like sphere of work, but you can imbue things and have them help hold energy for you. And so if it feels like this is too chaotic and I don't know how to do this, grounding yourself physically with bare feet on the ground is great too, but with that energetic space and asking the earth to hold it with you, imbuing this, shimmies, sighs, and what's something else like square breathing, box breathing, oh, and EFT tapping. Those are the ones that are coming up right now. So like square box breathing is inhaling for 4 counts, gently, smoothly, holding for 4 counts, exhaling for 4 counts, holding at the bottom for 4 counts, and doing as many of those as you can. I've done this rock climbing, I've done this skiing, I've done this when I'm in exposure, and I'm just like, whew, I just need to bring myself back into my body and have something very simple for my mind to have another job. Is like, okay, let me give it this counting job. And then there's the note taking of like, okay, let me give it something to do. Let me give my mind something to accomplish while I'm learning to be in this state of discomfort.
Yeah. I love all that. Thank you for sharing some practical tips and tools for people. And it's again just to kind of reiterate some of the pieces that I'm hearing from you. You know, I feel like it's the mind is not, you can't stop your mind from thinking. Like it just, that's what it does. And so giving it another job is huge, because if not, we kind of fight with ourselves and it only actually adds fuel to the fire. And then also what I'm hearing so much is this connection between mind and body, really a mindfulness practice of starting to inhabit your body again, which is, again, if all your energy is in your head and in your thoughts, you end up spiraling more and it doesn't actually make you feel better. But if you can start to bridge the gap and bring your awareness back into your body, whether that is through breathing or through, you know, feeling the support of the earth beneath you, or tapping or box breathing or whatever it may be, you are starting to build that connection and bring the awareness and therefore the energy back through, and moving energy through, which I think is so much of the uncomfortability and the anxiety, is this like stuck, built up tension and energy in the body that you don't know what to do with. Right. And so these tools are helping to move things through so they don't get suppressed and accumulate in your body.
Yeah.
And so I love that you shared all of that. And I think it's really, really important, because sometimes we just like send people out, go do like all these things, and, you know, and people are like, I don't know what to do with this. And so I think it's really helpful to know, practice this, and here are the tools to use to help you move through that. That is huge.
Yes.
Okay. I know we're already an hour and a half in, but we're going to keep going for just another moment, because I really want
Yes, I
to
love it.
just briefly touch on cycle syncing, because I know this is something that you have learned so much about and teach about. I know a lot of women have heard of this, but I don't believe a lot of women are actually implementing it, even myself included. I'm like, I go through phases where I'm like, you know, really prioritizing it, and then it falls off again. And so give us just the rundown of why cycle syncing is so powerful, and then just like a nutshell version of maybe like the top pieces that we can adjust in our lives in order to get on track. Because I know you can go way down the rabbit hole, but just kind of the biggest pieces that actually make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing for cycle syncing that will make the biggest difference is starting with the thing that we're the most disconnected from, and that would be winter, fall and winter. And most women, and this kind of actually brings us full circle back into that, my rejection of my own femininity in extreme sports is most of us have been conditioned to just turn it off, like literally turn it off through hormonal birth control, or to just muscle through it with pain pills and just like keep trying to maintain the same level of activity through our lowest energy. And so the one thing that'll make the biggest difference is, and then I'll explain more about what cycle syncing is to reorient our relationship with our internal winter, which is our bleed. And we'll go into why. So first I'll explain kind of a little mini breakdown of our four seasons. They mirror the four external seasons. Is we have follicular, ovulation, luteal, and menstruation. Follicular feels like spring. It feels actually like, whoa, this new energy. I'm creative. I'm brainstorming. I am excited to try new things. Ovulation is a shorter window, and it's technically within the bubble of depending on which way you are analyzing cycle syncing, but I like to have them as the four seasons. Ovulation is our most extroverted. It represents summer, our inner summer, our outgoingness, our external communications. It's when we feel our sexiest. It's when potentially you feel the most like libido naturally. Then we have our luteal, and that is the longest phase, and it kind of feels like it has two stages in it. And we're in kind of like the first stage of fall, like today. The beginning of your luteal phase feels like that. It feels like harvest season, like we're still going, we're executing, we got all the things. The later half of luteal feels like late November. And it's just like zoom, energy levels down. The weather outside is weather. I'm like maybe a little cranky cozy, and I need to have more boundaries. And the truth is coming up. Like this is like compost season. The leaves are falling. The versions of you that can't come with you are falling. And then we have winter, which is like this void of like rest, stillness. And it's also like your oracle. That's also like the version of you that is the most oracular, tuned in, tapped in, like psychic, energetic woman is actually during your bleed. And that's actually when the two hemispheres of our brain communicate the clearest is actually on our period. However, and I like making the seasonal metaphor because it makes sense, and I truly believe if we were more connected to growing our own food again, we would be in more just reverence of our own body's inner cycles. If we are getting if we're still trying to have spring and summer output in late November, first of all, we're not producing, the fruit's not there anymore. Everything's been harvested, but we're trying to act as if like, oh, let me create this new fruit. Why don't I have the energy I used to have? Like, oh, we're maintaining the level of energy and output that would come with the sun, that would come with the energy, that would come with all these things. But it's probably coming with the inner critic of why isn't this working? My energy's going low. Let me inject some caffeine into the mix. Let me force through this. Oh, my body isn't doing what I wish it would in the gym. Okay, I'm just going to force myself through this workout. Like that's potentially some of the self-talk that can happen. And that is the thing that actually leads us into experiencing things like PMS. And there's a whole lot to go into about estrogen levels and progesterone levels and all of these things. But the basic simplified version of how do I engage with my seasons is, do I actually let myself have a late fall and a winter, like ever? Like, what is my relationship with those things? Or like me, did you amp it up in the winter? Was that your most energetic time? In my physical winter, that was the case. And I just muscled through. Like ibuprofen was my best friend, for my bleed, for my period. And it was just muscling through it and then hoping that your energy kind of came back, except what you're actually doing is you're borrowing energy from your future season to force through winter. It's kind of like trying to force growing peaches in January. Like it's naturally going to happen if you give yourself the rest and rejuvenation and repair in the rest cycle. And you could also look at this in a 24-hour clock. You can't go that long in sleep deprivation without it affecting your whole day for multiple days on end. And then if you've gone through a few days, if you've ever gone to Burning Man, if you've ever gone to a festival where you get some sleep or you're pulling an all-nighter for school, whatever it is, it takes you a few days to get yourself back after even just one night of sleep deprivation. So imagine that you were doing that to your body for your whole life with your period. Like you're essentially, it's creating like sleep deprivation of your of your cycle, of your femininity, of your womb, of your seasons. And you get to a point where your vitality is so zapped that you can't grow fruit. And this is literal as well, that you become infertile because your body doesn't have the life force energy to just maintain life because of basically a version of sleep deprivation that is ongoing throughout all the seasons. And then you need things like artificial inputs, like caffeine, like whatever supplements, like all of these things to make yourself do things. And our body is like this epic, super powered quantum vessel, spaceship, a seasonal, like, oh my God, like multi-dimensional spacesuit. She is designed to work with the seasons. And when we work with the seasons and actually start bringing in like what's the medicine of the season, how do I honor it, and actually let myself be seasonal again with my internal season as well as external, the more, but start with the thing that's the closest, which is you and your body. And the more you start to rejuvenate, it'll take a second, just like when you're sleep deprived, you need multiple days to catch up on the sleep deprivation. When you start on this journey and maybe you've never rested on your period, there's going to be the part of you that's like, cool, so when do I get my energy back? Like next cycle. And it's going to be like, oh, babe, your body is going to finally have the chance to recognize how depleted it is. And it will take longer than your ego wants. It'll take longer than your ego wants, longer than your mind wants to replenish itself. And it will happen. And you will wonder how the heck you ever lived your life not living this way. It will replenish, and then you're going to have like, holy crap, there's just everything's popping off. There's so much life. I have so much energy. I don't have painful periods. I don't have PMS. I can actually exert myself on my period, but it's not like detrimental. And it's because you've restored your reserves. And so, no, you wouldn't do that on every period, but if you need to, like, you've got it. Like, oh yeah, no, okay, not ideal, but I can do that. And so there's so many pathways we can go with all of this, but I would say the biggest thing would be, you probably, like, if anyone isn't already cycle syncing, you probably don't know when are all of my seasons roughly falling, but you probably know when your bleed is, or maybe is meant to be. And I was a person, I didn't have a period for 3 years. And so I was completely severed, completely disconnected from any of this. And I got the nudge from, again, being a fly on the wall of women talking about cycle syncing, and none of them were pushing it on me. None of them were saying, you should do this. What you're doing is so bad. I was not forced into anything that I chose to do, which I think was a big factor because I didn't resist it. I didn't resist the shift or the information. It was enough curiosity for me to be like, what's happening here? Like, lean more in. And so I just started getting curious about that. And then I got intuition. This is like the beginning of me like tapping into intuition that, oh, I needed to get my IUD out. And that was like, I still got 2 more years on this thing. Like, why would I do that? And I got to face off with, and this is why that community piece keeps coming in, because we have so much conditioned fear of women, of just being women, being in our bodies, getting pregnant at any point. Not possible, by the way. There's only 5 days a month. So learning those things, like, I can only get pregnant 5 days a month. What? I've spent my whole life in fear unnecessarily. Excuse me. And so there is a grieving process with realizing how much isn't taught and how afraid of my body I had become and how disconnected I was and how, like, God, I want to be connected to my body and want to feel like a woman. And I literally know nothing about the thing that governs my whole existence. Like, what? So there was a frustration and a grief that's really natural and honestly needs to happen to make space for creating a new relationship. Like, we get to grieve and have all of the sensations and feelings that say, like, I didn't know better. And now I have the opportunity to become curious and fascinated in, again, playful communities where I'm not going to be punished, where they can hold space for me going through all of my emotions and my relationship changing. And most spaces with women that go into this work are that. And so you're going to land in a soft, cushy, pillowy landscape if you want to embark on this zone of life. But I would say that's, in a nutshell, the first thing to focus on for cycle syncing, because you can get into movement and how to change your that was big for me as an athlete, realizing, oh, if I'm working out during my period, I'm actually backfiring and I'm turning on survival signals that actually store fat. What? Excuse me? And that the best time to create muscle is during follicular and ovulation. So you'll get into this space where it ends up being like this blueprint for success that actually tells you, like, hold on, I have a map that tells me when to do what exactly? Wait, that's so nice. Like, wait, that's the best thing ever. I don't just have to throw spaghetti at the wall and guess. Like, I actually have a built-in blueprint for success as a woman. And yeah, I get to wade through the conditioning and the healing and the feeling and everything to like get myself to be willing to have that relationship. But once you get there, it's just like, I couldn't live without this. Like, this is, how did I ever live without this? This is mandatory in everything that I do with me and with my clients. We bring it into their businesses. We bring it into every aspect, because wherever you go, there you are. And it's being influenced by the season that you're in. So I just had a client she had a big event this weekend. She has a speaking engagement in a few days, but she's going to be on her bleed. And it was also all this eclipse energy. So instead of being like, okay, go, go, go. We have to do all of these things in order to get you prepared for this big event and your speaking engagement, but she's not going to be her most extroverted self. She isn't. So instead of forcing that, it's, okay, I know that I'm going to be lower energy than I think I will be. I'm going to get steak. I'm going to replenish my iron. I'm going to work on my minerals. I'm going to get cacao. I'm going to get magnesium. I'm going to love on myself. I'm going to honor my slowdown. I'm going to do front end work so I can slow down and trust it. So it reorients yourself the same way you would with the weather of like, oh, it's going to be winter. I have yard work stuff that I haven't cleaned up. Let me go tackle that. Let me figure out the stuff on the roof. Let me go like winterize my pipes, like all the things that are necessary for like living in a home based in the outdoors. And then by the time winter comes around, it's already done. I get to rest. I get to have my fireplace. I get to have my hot chocolate. I get to chilled out with a book because I already did that work knowing that winter was around the corner. And now I can rest. And now I can be an oracle. And then when spring comes around, pivot, I have so much clarity because I rested. And I would say this is like the last like drive home point with embracing winter is like the physics of life. You can't make big pivots in your life when you're going fast. Like a train would derail. If you can imagine doing that on a bike or in your car, like you're going to get that car up on two wheels. Like it's like scary. If you want to make bigger pivots, you need to slow the vehicle down, get clarity on where you're going, almost come to a stop point, if not a stop point, and then turn the car. And from that point, you can make a full 180. If you actually reach a still point, you can turn everything around. Like if that's kind of the metaphor for your life right now and you need to make a 180-degree turn, you have to come to a stop to do that. Otherwise, if you're going 100 miles an hour, you're just going to keep going 100 miles an hour in the direction you don't want to be going in anymore. So this is where learning monthly how to slow down in microdosing bites, like, okay, just 1 or 2 days at a time, can I allow myself to rest and be with the uncomfortable sensation of not knowing how to rest and build up my familiarity with that somatic experience. Ultimately, you'll get to a point where you relish in it and you're like, oh, bleed days, this is so good. I love my period. And don't expect that that'll be your experience right away, because you need to somatically move through like the gunk and the scar tissue. But eventually you'll get to a point where you're like, my bleed is so sacred. It is the most powerful time of month. I get all my oracle answers. I love myself. I got my heating pad. I got my cacao. I got my steak. Like, it's romantic instead of resentful. And that's really, I think, if I could like boil down my work and all of the different facets and angles, it's that we make your life romantic as a woman. In business, in your relationship to your body, in your relationship to energetics, like we romance the fuck out of it. and find like your full access to your full expression and your full body and your full movement in your power, but not in competition with what you felt oppressed by, but in like romantic aliveness to, oh my God, I get to be a woman and a human on this amazing planet where fruit just grows on trees. Are you kidding me? Like, that is ultimately like the freedom that all of my clients are orienting to.
And imagine how much happier, more liberated, more purposeful, more alive you feel when you enjoy being a woman and you feel the pleasure that's activated through romanticizing your life and actually enjoying the body that you're in, right? I just feel the reward is huge, and I've experienced that in my own life too. And a whole other conversation we might need to do a part 2 at some point is how that affects relationships.
Oh yeah. It talk about a 180.
Huge.
Like, to go from extreme sports, I have to prove myself, I have to turn off my body's function, I have to suppress my feminine nature, all of the things, to being like, oh my God, I get to be in receptivity, and that's a superpower, and men adore how easy it is. I've literally have guy friends, platonic friends, who are like, you're just easy to give to. Like, I love giving to you. And like, you don't have to earn it, you don't have to prove it, you don't have to be anything other than your radiance. And you can be real about your rawest, most like deep, like, whoa, emotions. And that is actually a lean in magnetizing force for men who are in their masculine. It's not like they're leaned in to like, more, give me more of you. And that is the craziest talk about somatics. That is the wildest experience, to go from, I have to shrink myself and put myself in this box so I am palatable for you, into breaking out of that box and then meeting the people who can hold you when you are fully expressed, who want more. Yeah. When your whole life you have been taught to, you have shrunk yourself. And so like, that ultimately is what you're going towards when you go on any of the things that we've talked about in this podcast. For anyone listening, that's what you're headed towards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you realize that the true masculine wants to provide, wants to be of service. So it's actually a gift to them when you can be real and express yourself, you know, and it becomes,
it's fuel for them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it's like the
feedback loop.
It's this give receive cycle that is eternal. It is life-giving. It is literally the polarity that maintains time and space as we know it. Like, oh, it's so good. So yeah, we part 2.
For sure. Kitty, you are amazing and have so much embodied wisdom. Like, I can just tell that through your own journey, you've learned a lot, not just from opening a book and reading it, but actually living it. And, you know, that's full circle to what you were saying earlier of like, don't try and exit this body. That can happen a lot through spiritual bypassing of like, let me just live in the realm above, but actually like live this life, be in the messy dirt, and like actually experience it so that I can gain the wisdom and be here fully and enjoy it all, and all the sensations and the pleasure and the beauty that comes when we are deeply grounded in the earth. And that is such a beautiful segue to your offerings. And so I want to pass it over to you. I'm sure people are interested in how they can work with you. So tell us what you have going on.
Yeah. So my brand is Dirt Goddess. So everything you're just saying is perfect. Like in the dirt, like in the dirt, like the divine, like rooted divine, like you're here on earth, you're a human. How do we love being a human? And specifically, I also work with men, but for the women's component of it, like, how do I love being a woman in this body, on this planet, and tap into this cyclical wisdom that governs my biology, that governs the seasons that literally govern all life on this planet, and then the spiritual season, because it's the same as the hero's journey. All of these mimic each other. And so when you see that this is a blueprint for literally like the human game, then it's full game on. Then it's gamified. Then you are playing a completely different game in this life. And you're doing it from the vehicle of your body. So that is what I do in pretty much all of my courses, but they tend to be like honed in in specific ways. So Vessel is a 6-month long mastermind that is, how do I do all this as an entrepreneur, as a creative, and as an artist? How do I use my body as a vehicle to be like the vessel for my soul's dharma and purpose, and get myself in right alignment for this energy to naturally pull through, for me to be more sensitive to the intuitions, for me to know how to take action on this, for me to know how to deal with this somatic edge, like, this is scary, launching the thing or being out there or doing those things. All of that has to do with this whole conversation that we've had on this podcast. And I also have, there's one-on-one work where we do this custom. And I also have a membership that is brand new, and it's called The Garden. And the way I've been liking to describe this is like, it's like Quantum Earth Fairy meets Alice in Wonderland backyard tea temple, like of a virtual online space where this conversation about each season building upon itself gets to happen throughout the seasons that we're actually in. So today's the first day of fall. The next 3 months of the membership, we're going into feminine descent, because this is the thing, this is the aspect, like I said, in our cycle syncing that our society is the most disconnected from, which means spiritually it's the thing we're the most deficient in. And it's also the most nourishing. This is the compost that creates that fertile soil for all of the blast off and the ideas, the motivation, the confidence in the spring. And so that's like, how do we restore our body on a biological level, and how do we really embrace like the shadow work season, the compost? Like, let's get in there, let's activate the like play and the theater of the shadow feminine to create ownership of it. And then we're going into winter. How do we like hygify, which is like the Danish term for like cozy, nourishing, romantic, like squish, like I love it. Like, how do I set myself up for success in this void, the spiritual void, which can also be the place that we try to distract ourselves the most, that we try to like grasp, just do, accomplish, start fresh in the middle of the winter in the darkest, coldest time of the year. That makes so much sense. Like, we actually decondition all of this stuff and get back in right relationship with our seasons, with our actual seasons, our biological seasons, our actual seasons, and therefore our spiritual seasons. And that membership is so exciting because every month has a themed training. So we just finished with Make It Sacred Virgo season, which was a lot of like spiritual, and then we had the Pisces and Virgo eclipse. So it was both spiritual wellness and physical body wellness. And everything that I do is flavored with what I call a spiritual wellness protocol. So how do we support ourselves through all of these seasons appropriately? And then we'll go into spring, and then we're blasting off on other things like, okay, now we've got detox, but we also have creation and like flourishing and the feminine like expression and blooming. So we'll blend those things together because, as you've heard on this podcast, the body and the spirit and the emotions are all interwoven with each other. So that membership is super exciting, and we're just kicking off. So this is like probably the best time ever to join. If anyone's like, okay, hold on, I want a little bit of everything that you just talked about, that would be the membership. And if you are someone who is like, no, I've got a big ass mission and I want to learn how to do this in relationship to my business and my purpose, then that would be Vessel.
Okay, beautiful. So Vessel, the garden, and then the one-on-one work are kind of the best points.
Those are the best points.
Okay,
and then I have my signature course is Dirt Goddess, but that won't be for a few months.
Okay, cool. Amazing. I love that because there's a little something there for everyone depending on where they're at and what they're looking for.
And then there's Nectar. Nectar is the cycle syncing course. So if you just want to learn about the cycle syncing and like just understand those cycles and how to like move, plan, and like adjust your lifestyle in accordance to your seasons, that's like cycle syncing one-on-one. So it isn't getting into like clinical hormone levels, but I have suggestions for that if you ever need recommendations for that. But Nectar is like, okay, I've heard about this, but I'm not really sure what the next steps to do. Like, that's the best place. And we also go into love languages and how to communicate with your partners and your loved ones. Like, how do I take my understanding of my inside world into my external world in a way that allows people to love me even better?
And is that a self-study course?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Perfect. Beautiful. Amazing. I feel like you have so many offers for depending on where someone is at and what they want to dive into next. And I will include the links below for people to access and go follow you on Instagram and all the things. Is there anything else that you feel called to share before we wrap this up that I haven't asked you?
Mm. I think the biggest thing that the majority of people could just learn from is that rest at first doesn't feel good. And that's a good thing to know going into it, is rest at first, because we've been so sleep deprived spiritually and on our seasonal relationship, is at first it will feel like your body's catching up on years of backlog, and it will feel like a detox to all the systems that profit off of your ongoing, feeding off of your attention, your productivity, your achievement, like your worthiness is based off of what you do. So initially learning how to rest and how to orient towards fall and winter, and it's so beautiful that we're in that season right now, is going to feel like an active detox. And so go back and re-listen to the parts of this where we talk about some of the different somatic tools and use those every single day. And just like create some grounding in your nervous system. And even if it's literally you just putting like your hand on your chest and saying like, it's safe to slow down. I know it hasn't felt safe in the past, but I'm learning that it is safe to slow down. And I'm going to look for evidence that it is. I'm going to put myself in environments where it is, and like have that conviction within yourself. It's like a soft conviction. It's a conviction that is like devotional, of like, I want to get to know that version of me so much. I'm going to make sure that I put myself in those spaces, and I love myself enough to sit in the discomfort, and I love myself enough to feel the feelings I don't know how to feel yet. And I love myself enough, like it's really, and that's where the romance part comes in, is like, it's very devotional. So anything that stood out to you in this whole podcast is, can you frame it through devotion instead of fixing yourself? And like that alone, that reorientation alone will make a night and day difference.
Yeah, you're not a machine that needs fixing. You're just reconnecting to a spiritual level, to the earth, to your truth. And to do that with other women, to do that in community is beautiful. And I think we all have the ability to do that, just continuously taking the next best step, following those breadcrumbs, like you said. So thank you so much. I am so grateful to know you and to love you. And I'm excited to just keep going on this path and supporting each other and supporting more women on this journey. It's like the most fulfilling part of all. So thank you so much, Katie. I love you so much, and I'm so grateful for you and for coming on.
Love you. Thank you so much.
Yay. All right, everyone, we will catch you next time. Thank you.